Hello everyone and welcome to the class of Fundamental Fluid Mechanics brought to you by the Thermofluids team. In the last lecture, I gave you the outline of this subject as to what we would be learning throughout this course, and today we would be officially starting the course. So as this course is called as the Fundamental Fluid Mechanics, so today we are going to talk about what these fluids are and what are their characteristics. The second objective of this lecture is to understand what is the validity of the fluid mechanics. So we would talk about what is called as a continuum hypothesis, and that hypothesis, it roughly tells us where we can apply this principle and this knowledge of fluid mechanics, and that is how we can understand the limitations of the subject as well. So without wasting any further time, let's start it with the first one. So, as we know from the high school science that matter exists in three different forms. The first one is the solids, the second one being the liquid, while the third one being as the gas. There's the fourth one called as plasma, but we're not talking about that. So, whenever we talk about fluids, it means that we are talking about either a liquid or a gas. And one of the ways in which we distinguish a solid from a fluid is by the application of what is called a shear stress. So if you remember from the solid mechanics, if you apply a shear stress on a solid, it deforms up to a certain extent, and after that, it resists that deformation. On the other hand, fluids do not have this property. So if we apply a shear stress on a fluid, it continuously deforms, and it doesn't really matter if the shear stress is big or small. Even if it's a tiny fraction, it would still deform continuously. So that is the technical definition of a fluid, that it is a material which deforms continuously whenever you apply any kind of shear stress on it. So therefore, whenever we study fluid mechanics, we're not really concerned about the strain. We are more concerned about what is the rate of that strain. So the rate of the strain or the strain rate, which is also called as rate of deformation, so these three are synonymous to each other. It becomes very important with respect to the fluid mechanics. For the solid mechanics, we know that stress and strain are related to each other. They are proportional to each other. But in the class of fluid mechanics, the stress or the shear stress here, it's proportional to the rate of strain. And now we are going to talk about what is called as the Newton's law of viscosity. So as I was saying that the shear stress, it's proportional to the strain rate. So if I remove this sign of proportionality, I can write shear stress is a constant, which I'm representing as mu, times the strain rate. And this constant of proportionality, mu, is called as the dynamic viscosity. And physically, it represents how internally resistant a fluid is. So for example, if you consider water against honey, we know that water is easier to flow than honey because in technical terms, water has lesser resistance within itself as compared to honey. So this constant of proportionality gives that idea. But the takeaway here is if the fluid follows this particular relationship, that is this linear relationship between shear stress and the strain rate, then we call that fluid as the Newtonian fluid, because this particular law is called as the Newton's law of viscosity. So if we have a fluid that obeys this particular Newton's law of viscosity, then we call that particular fluid as the Newtonian fluid. So from this, we get the Newtonian fluids. Not surprisingly, the fluids that do not obey this Newton's law of viscosity are called as non-Newtonian fluids. So the scope of this lecture series is only restricted to Newtonian fluids because they are much easier to understand and analyze. So some example of Newtonian fluids are water, air, and some certain oils, while the non-Newtonian fluids, for instance, are blood, toothpaste, honey, for instance. So we are going to restrict ourselves to the study of these Newtonian fluids such as water and air. The next thing that I want to discuss with you is regarding this continuum hypothesis. So we ask ourselves this question as to when can we really apply this knowledge of fluid mechanics. So to apply any principles of fluid mechanics, we have to make sure that this particular deformable material, so we call the fluid as a deformable material, or rather a continuously deformable material. So we have to make sure that this continuously deformable material can have continuous properties throughout its domain. So what I'm trying to say here is, if I have a fluid domain, I want to make sure that the fluid properties are continuous on that and there are no sharp changes or any kind of discontinuities in the fluid domain. So let me try to demonstrate it through a very simple sort of thought experiment, and I'll try to demonstrate what this continuum hypothesis physically is. So let us consider a fluid domain. So this particular box, it is, let us say, it contains all these fluid molecules inside it. So I'm just randomly putting these molecules here. Now what we would do is, we would take a very small volume, and the volume of this box is delta V. Now what we would do is, we would put this small molecule at different location inside a fluid domain, and we want to monitor the quantity called as delta M divided by delta V. That is the mass inside this volume divided by its volume, which also becomes the density. So this would be the density of this volume, and I want to plot it against the volume itself. So we want to see what happens when we start with a very tiny volume and we move it around in the fluid domain, and we want to see the density with respect to the volume itself. So what happens if we increase the volume or increase the sample volume, and we want to see how the density changes. So for this very tiny volume, you know that there are instances when it can have one molecule inside. There can be instances when there are no molecules inside, and there can be instances when there are more than one molecule inside. So for very small values of this delta V, the density, the corresponding density, it might fluctuate. So you can see that having a very tiny volume can introduce these kind of fluctuations in the density. Now we want to see what happens if we increase this volume to a bigger limit. So if I consider a volume of, let's say, this size, and if I put it in different places in the density field, so I'm just sketching a few sample zones, and we can see that the number of molecules in these randomly selected zones, they roughly stay the same, right? There would come a time when the volume is big enough such that the number of molecules inside the domain are roughly the same, and at that time, this particular variable, that is the density, it would assume a constant value. So we can say that after a certain while, there would be a threshold volume after which the property would remain constant, and it would not be a function of where we are sampling. And that is where we can say that at that point onwards, the continuum hypothesis would be valid, because before that, it depends on where we are sampling, and because of which the properties might fluctuate. And that is what I meant by sudden jumps or discontinuities in the properties. So in continuum hypothesis, we say that we are talking about this domain where the volume is large enough to have sufficient number of molecules such that the properties of the fluid do not change very sharply. So I would represent that as a threshold volume, and I would say that the continuum hypothesis is okay. On the other hand, if we keep increasing the size of this volume, and we are talking about something that is order of the kilometers, so we're talking about 1 or 2 kilometers or more, then also there would be changes in the density field, because now we are taking into account, for instance, the atmosphere of the Earth, which has some density variations along with that. So that is attributed to macroscopic variations. So during this course, we are interested in this region that lies between the two parts where the fluid properties more or less remains the same and they're not a function of the sampling volume. So this was regarding the physical aspect of it, but to characterize it mathematically, we have a dimensionless parameter called as the Knudsen number. So Knudsen number is given as the ratio of the mean free path to a characteristic length, and we often represent it as lambda over L. So mean free path, it represents the distance a molecule will take or it would travel before it collides with another molecule. So it sort of represents how closely packed the molecules are, whereas the characteristic length of the flow is any length that is relevant to that flow field. So for instance, if there's a flow in a pipe, it might be the diameter of the pipe, or if we're talking about flow over a car, we can say that it might be the height or the length of the car. So in that way, if we take the ratio of the mean free path to the characteristic length scale of the flow, and if that ratio, the Knudsen number, which is often represented as Kn, if the Kn is smaller than or equals to 0.01, we say that the continuum hypothesis is alright. So I'll wind up this lecture here, and having learned that, in the next lecture we'll talk about what is called as the Eulerian and Lagrangian description of fluid mechanics. So this is, in a rough way, it is a way of looking at the fluid flow, and we would be learning about that in the next lecture. So this is again a part of Unit 1 where we are still sort of familiarizing ourselves with the notion of fluid flow. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so that you can get updates regarding our next updates. Also, if you are interested in learning thermodynamics, we have a parallel series going on that talks about the fundamentals of thermodynamics. So I'll see you in the next lecture where we will be talking about the Eulerian and Lagrangian description.